Hey, welcome back to the channel, guys. Drawing with Michael Clarida Arts. So this morning I am doing a tutorial. Yay, tutorial, what? Tutorials on how to utilize the tools, the digital tools, to really create attractive and marketable art using, the digital programs and tablets and everything else that's available to the artist today. I had somebody contact me the other day on YouTube iterating that they were very trepidatious, afraid, concerned about translating their skill set from the traditional over to the digital realm. And they were quote unquote interested. And that is really awesome. I think as artists, we always need to be open for new ways of doing artwork, illustration, graphic design. And the way technology is progressing, we're able to do that now a little bit easier, I think, than it had been in the past. The thing is how you work in the traditional can be translated over into the digital. And I'm going to show you one way that I do that. So a lot of you guys know that I have a background in traditional art, animation, illustration, figure work, figure art. I came from a traditional background, meaning I used pencil, I used traditional paint, I used acrylics, watercolor, and whenever I first started getting into digital artwork, it was in school, and I was really not happy about it. It was one of those classes that, I took, and the teacher said, you'll be using digital art a lot because that's kind of where the whole market is going. And at the time, I had my nose up in the air, and I thought, oh, I'm a traditional artist. I don't need digital art. That's for people who can't draw. Man, was I completely wrong. And I literally, as I evolved in my first job at a company called Foot Locker Incorporated, basically is owned by a huge conglomerate called Venator Group. They ended up hiring me as a graphic designer, and I had to learn a lot of the things that I think I should have accepted early on in my school career. I had to learn in a very short period of time. I had to learn Illustrator, I had to learn Photoshop, I had to learn Painter, Sketchbook, and all those programs that now I take for granted because they're in my skill set, but I had to learn them at an accelerated rate. So what I'm going to do today, utilizing the XP Pen Artist 22 second generation, and I say that because this is kind of an agreement between myself and XP Pen to create some of these tutorials that they can utilize, as marketing tools. And also, it gives me an opportunity to create a tutorial using a digital tablet such as the XP Pen. Now, how does the XP Pen 22 compare to some of the other tablets? It's very comparable. It's just at a lower price point. But I think that you'll see it doesn't fall short in any of the drawing capabilities, because at the end of the day, it's really just a tool, guys. It's not a solution. It's just a tool for you to learn and interface with the programs. I think that whenever somebody gets into digital art, understanding what it really takes to get up and running is not something that is readily available. Right? You get into it and you think, oh, I'm just going to use my phone. I'm just going to use my laptop. And suddenly you start running into all these roadblocks, from the learning curve of Photoshop or some of those other programs to possibly the cost involved with getting a tablet. And also you have to have a computer. And what do I choose? Do I choose an all-in-one? Do I choose a standalone? Do I choose a desktop? What the amount of information that's out there and it is available for the digital artist or the budding computer enthusiast that wants to get into digital art really runs into a few roadblocks. One of the other one of the other YouTubers on here, Aaron Rutten, he goes through and he explains what's involved in getting into digital art, what you need to utilize. He goes step by step. So if you want to look at some of those things while I drone on about them and draw, then definitely visit Aaron Rutten's channel. He's a very, sensible guy. He's noted as being a painter master. I'm not sure what that is, but I think that he's a very good resource for you if you want to go in and look at some of the avenues you can go down as far as digital art tools goes. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take this drawing of my character Beans from my a can of beans. Can of beans. Beans eating beans. Anyway, so I did this traditionally, and I'm going to post that video down below, and I kind of go, it takes about 45 minutes, and I do it in real time, and you can kind of hear my process of drawing this particular piece in blue line pencil on Bristol board, and you can hear my process of creating this traditional sketch. Now, what I did is I took a picture of it, pretty simple with my phone. We don't need scanners anymore. It's kind of funny. And I'm going to import it into a program such as Photoshop or Rebel or Illustrator, or one of those programs. And I'm going to go through, ink it, I'm going to put in color flats, and then I'm going to go into the rendering process. I've done this previously with a few other videos, but I'm going to take it a step further and really explain the process to which I've kind of narrowed down as what's best for me. Now, it's going to be different for everybody, I guess. Everybody has a nuance of how they work. Everybody decides on their best workflow. This is what works for me. And funny thing is I change it all the time. Just a little bit. I tweak it just a little bit. Maybe this particular piece necessitates me to include a texture in it. Maybe this piece I need to do some layer masks. Maybe this piece I just want to be free-flowing and real sketchy and watercolory. So depending on how you flow in your workflow is going to really dictate how you manipulate these programs. I'm going to be working on an all-in-one today, a PC, and I'll be working on the XP Pen. So XP Pen Artist 22, second generation. That's a mouthful. And this is not a sponsored video, so I want you to understand, me saying that it's not a sponsored video indicates they're not paying me to promote their product. All of the opinions in this video are going to be my own. The only reason that I'm indicating the tools that I'm using is because they've sent me over a product to review, and I want to make sure that I honor that. And all the opinions, again, are my own. I'm very particular on the products, and you guys know that if I don't believe in a product, then I will literally, I don't want to say literally pick it apart. I'll give you the pros and cons, and I'll give my final opinion. So far, I've already done a review of this particular product, and it's worked out good, exactly as designed. And that's interesting because as designed, and I've said that before, it doesn't exceed expectations to the point where I'm like gushing as a user, but it meets the specifications, it meets the expectations, and in some regards, it does exceed my overall view of the XP Pen brand. XP Pen brand being, I say a budget, budget $500, $600, $700, $800, $900, $1,000. That's not really a budget. But whenever you compare it to some of the other items in the marketplace, especially the Wacom, the Wacom Pro, the Wacom Artist Series, the Wacom One, some of those tablets are, $2,000, $3,000. Even the 32 inch is like $3,200, $3,300, I believe. So I do believe in this product. I believe in what I'm, going to show you guys today. So definitely enjoy and make comments below. I've had a lot of people ask me about the brushes I use. My gosh, it's like every single video I post. Here's the deal with the brushes. I don't make brushes currently. I have the ability to, but I don't. And I've got a huge collection of brushes, and they're from everywhere over the past 20 years. And to tell you where I got them sometimes is kind of hard because I've had them for so long. One of the brushes that I utilize not only on Procreate, but also in my Photoshop PC and Mac environment comes from creatureartteacher.com. And that particular website is owned and operated by Aaron Blaze. He's got a channel on YouTube, and he's got a huge amount of tutorials and lessons over there on his channel. Please go visit him. And if you sign up for his newsletter, you get his Aaron Brushes 1 brush pack, which includes, I believe, like 10 or 12 brushes. And the Pastel C is the brush that I typically draw with. It's got great pressure curve, good texture. It's got nice taper. I can use tilt on it. I can use direction on it. I can do pretty much whatever I want. And it's cross-platform applicable from Photoshop to Procreate. And, with a little tweak in it, works almost the same in Procreate. So that being said, on to the inking process. I might redraw this guy just a little bit again. We're going to be doing this drawing right here, traditional on paper. There's only one of these. So enjoy. Okay, so this morning I'm going to be doing, like I indicated, a illustration, and I'm going to show you the process of what I do whenever I create digital artwork. Now, there's a myriad of ways that I do it, but this is the way, or at least one way, that I utilize. So today I'm working on the XP Pen Artist 22 second generation. And if you're interested in a tutorial, not a tutorial, if you're interested in a review of this product, just click in the description below where I did some simple character faces. This drawing right here that you're seeing as my desktop was part of the testing phase that I did before I actually started video recording. And this bird is going to be part of an artist series of animals using this particular tablet. So the battery on my machine, unfortunately, isn't that high, and I can't plug in the charge cable, so bear with me. We're going to do this in stages. So what I did was I went ahead and took a picture of the illustration. Oh, that's not good. It said preferences set to default, which is interesting. I don't know why I did that. Hopefully I didn't lose all my brushes. Nope, we're good. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and file new. I've got the width currently at 22 inches by 12 inches. So I wanted it similar in size to the screen. So orientation, we're gonna go ahead and create, and I've specified a color for the background. So let's understand, and I do have, of course, other videos as well explaining the basics of Photoshop. So whenever you get in here, you want to basically have a decent PPI/DPI. For my preferences, I always draw on a toned background, whether it's a color hue or a gray. Typically, I'll start on a gray, especially whenever I'm working in black and white. 22 by 12 is good. Orientation is going to be landscape, not portrait. Portrait would be up and down, such as this right here, and landscape being horizontal. And you can actually specify if you want artboards as well, but I don't specify that. I just want the live canvas area. So let's go ahead and create. Okay, I've paired the XP Pen remote as well with my PC via a dongle. And you guys, those who frequent my channel know that I like this device. It was very inexpensive, about $40, $45. And just so I can utilize the quick keys on the left-hand side, I've pre-programmed the quick keys on here to coincide with keyboard shortcuts. So that's really nice. And it also has a scroll wheel that I can change the size of the brush and also zoom in and out. And that's really cool. So I've activated it, make sure, and then a lot of times it defaults. So let's go ahead to the, yeah, see it defaulted to the system, hit OK. Now we're set up in Photoshop. So I can zoom in and out, and the quick key is there. And if I want to change the brush, it's interesting, you press the center black button and it brings up this small interface. These are all the options that you can utilize. You can zoom in and out. You can change the brush size. You can scroll up and down. You can change the brush size, and you can rotate. These are pre-programmed things that are in the XP Pen remote. And what I've noticed is a lot of times I'll accidentally hit a key and it'll automatically go and start doing things I don't really want. That being said, let's go ahead and file, open. In Photoshop, it defaults to the cloud documents, which I don't really like. So let's go in on my computer, desktop, and Beans. Let's open that. And there he is in all of his glory. Now it opens as a separate document because I didn't place or I didn't import. So I'm going to go ahead, since it is a JPEG, I'm going to go ahead and select all, image. We're going to go edit, copy, and edit, paste. Excellent. I can move that around if I want, and I'm going to transform it. So we're going to go edit, transform. We're going to go scale. There's a lot of things going on here. So let's go back. And, you know, you've imported your JPEG. So I got it. I showed you how to get it from here, which is to copy. Select all, copy. Go ahead and quit that. Paste into my pre-created document that I want to be able to work at. And it brings it in on a separate layer automatically and from the background. So now I want to make this image larger because I want it to basically fit into the canvas area. So I'm going to go edit. I'm going to go transform. So let's go back, edit, transform, come over here. See, all the windows I think confuse people a lot of times in Photoshop. But if you have in the mindset, you have certain actions that you're going to execute. All you have to do is just look for the keyword. So it's like, what's the difference between transform and free transform? Well, free transform is going to bring up the ability to skew and to distort and to do some things. You know, you're going to make it larger, skinnier. But if I'm going to go transform, and all I'm going to do is scale, making it larger, it's going to have these, the selection dialog, or not dialog, the selection box. So I'm going to make it larger. Okay. And all these little red lines that you're seeing in terms of center line, you can actually get rid of those, but for giggles, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as it is. Okay. So if I had a keyboard, all I would do would hit return. Return would basically get rid of this selection dialog, but instead I'm going to go to the move tool, or I can go to another tool and it'll automatically deselect that because I'm going to a different tool. Since I don't have my keyboard in front of me, I've got my quick key remote. It's just easy for me to do that. So now what I want to do is I want to preserve the sketch. So what I did just then is I clicked my center pre-programmed button for F, the key F on the keyboard. That brings it into full screen mode. And there's different levels of full screen. You can have full screen. You can have full screen with all of this business, the extra, I don't even know what they're called, just little windows. And then if I click again, it gets rid of everything. So I like typically to keep it at this, but unfortunately in the Windows operating system, I guess there's something going on between Photoshop and Windows. It blinks whenever you do certain things. So a lot of times I'll just click over here whenever I'm drawing just to get rid of all the gobbledygook that is there. So that is a technical term for those of you who are not artists. Gobbledygook is just noise and business that you don't really care and want to see in your illustration. Okay, so this is a rough sketch. I'm going to go ahead over to this layers dialog box. And this typically will reside up here. So if it's up here, let's go ahead and get rid of this. See, you have libraries, you have tool presets, clones, you have channels, you have brushes, and you have properties. You're like, where in the heck are the layers? So up here, you have pre-done work interfaces that you can actually set: photography, painting, motion. Mine's currently at painting, so it brings up the boxes that are most used by painters, and they've done broad swaths of data collection to bring this up. Now, typically you'll have the layers over here on the right-hand side, but I got rid of those, so if you get confused, again, there's another way to do it. Let's go up here to the view, to the windows. Let's go to layers, and boom, here's your layers. And you can customize, let's say you want color. You don't want color over here on the left-hand side. You want color in the layers dialog box. You can just drag that over, which is really nice. I like mine right here. Typically, I like it right here, okay? All right. Paths, I don't really use, but I do use layers quite a bit, and I do use the history and the character whenever I'm doing graphic design. So we're gonna go over here to the layer. You don't have to select anything. We're gonna go to the opacity, and we're going to choke the opacity down or adjust. I'm gonna choke the opacity until it goes down. No, so we're just going to go down here, and since it is blue, cool, on a cool gray background, it's a little bit harder to see. So I'm gonna go ahead and just click anywhere. I can click here and it'll quit going into that particular dialog box. And I think that it's a little dark right now, so I'm going ahead and image. I'm gonna switch layers to background. I need to go ahead and I need to click that off. Click all of these off. Double click and it's going to treat it as a normal layer. So you saw that it had a background listing. So backgrounds you really can't adjust, you can't do things to because they're locked, and it had the lock on it. So now I've double clicked it outside of the white square. I've double clicked it, and now I basically, you saw the questions it asked. So let's go ahead background. You see all these, the layer transparency is locked, the move tool is locked, it's got a crop on it, and it's locked via this little icon. So I'm gonna turn that off, that off, that off, and I'm gonna come over here to the gray area, double click. It's gonna bring up a secondary dialog box, and it's got a bunch of things I can do to it because it's basically now treating it as a new layer. Just as if I were to go down here and hit the plus button, it's going to ask me certain questions before I can move on. If I want to name it, if I want to make it a color, meaning if I want to make it a color here to designate it different from the other layers, I can adjust the opacity, and I can throw a layer transparency effect on there if I want to. I don't want to do any of that, so I'll just hit OK. So now I'm going to come up here to the top tab, all the way at the top. There's a lot of things going on up here. And I think whenever I first started using Photoshop, I was blown away by the amount of things I could do the same thing. And I've said this on the channel before. Photoshop is a Swiss Army knife program. You can do a lot in it. You can do 3D, you can do animation, you can do illustration, you can do photograph manipulation. You can time travel. You can go to the planets, via a supernatural wormhole portal. Ooh, I wasn't supposed to say any of that. Oh, crap. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. The reality is it is a very robust program, and that's why it takes years to quote unquote master it. I've been using it for a long time, and I wouldn't even consider myself to be a quote unquote master. So I'm gonna go ahead and lighten this. I'm gonna go to image because, again, keywords, image. I don't want to edit. Now, you would think edit would be the keyword, but you have to think in terms of I'm going to edit the image. So image being the first keyword, image, and then I'm going to go to adjustments. Now there's different, look at all the stuff here. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but what do I want to do? I want to make it lighter. So I'm going to go to adjustments, brightness and contrast. Now there's a lot of things going on here. Curves has to do with the gray tones and how I can lighten and darken certain gray levels. The levels being the color and the intensity. Exposure, of course, going back to photography, how much light you expose the emulsion determines how light or how dark it is. But brightness and contrast seems pretty plain. So let's go ahead. That's a dialog box that comes up. Here's your adjustments. Legacy obviously is something that, for users, and users have been using Photoshop, understand legacy has to do with the way Photoshop used to adjust brightness and contrast. And a lot of people didn't like when they changed things because they changed the algorithm, and now whenever you do brightness and contrast, it doesn't do things in a very black and white situation, because that's what it used to be. Brightness, I adjust the brightness, black and white, and then contrast being the difference between light and dark. So a lot of people didn't like that, so they offered the legacy button. I'm literally just going to brighten it, and you see how that brightens that gray tone that I put in the background whenever I first open the document. And you can specify if it's preview or not preview. I always have preview on. And preview will actually also be part of that live action that Photoshop offers. Live being it's going to utilize your video card, and the preview is going to eat up your video card allocation. If you have a weak video card, preview might not work for you, or it'll give you an error dialog. That's something that as you progress and you learn how computers work, then you'll understand that preview is something, it's not a luxury, but it is something that can affect your workflow if you don't have a stronger computer. Photoshop might run on it, but you can't use preview. However, I have a pretty decent machine, so I'm gonna hit preview, boom. Okay, so now I don't wanna draw on this layer. This layer currently is at 52%. So currently, if I'm scrolling through, let's say I have 15 layers and I accidentally hit this layer, I can actually draw on it by accident. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer. It locks it, so I can't do anything. So I'm on the layer, and I go from the dialog box. I've already locked it, and now I can't draw on my original drawing. This is important because you want to be able to utilize your original drawing to the effect of reference. I'm not using it as a trace over. I'm not using it as a, final. It is merely a reference while I ink. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer. I come down here to the little icons down below. I click on that and it adds a layer. Now, since I don't have touch on here, which is really nice, I don't have to worry about me drawing and accidentally having my hand or my knuckle hit this layer dialog box. That could be a problem. Yeah, so having a touch screen is really good. I think, having an all-in-one and you're drawing and you're doing things, but you always have to be considerate that maybe your hand, depending on where you have this layers palette, you're going to come over and you're going to accidentally switch layers. So as a conscious little mental note, occasionally I'll be looking over to the right-hand side. I'll be checking to make sure that I haven't switched layers. And, just as I had said before, lock that layer that you don't want to be sketched on. It's one of those important little mental notes that I think is sorely overlooked in the training and learning process. And one of the ways that you can really alleviate that is, of course, to wear the glove. And I know some people poo-poo the glove, and that's fine. You poo-poo the glove. I don't really care. It just depends on your preference. It doesn't make any difference to me. The glove actually acts as sort of a lube, a lubricant, for lack of a better phrase, to really help your hand glide across the screen. What's really nice about this particular device, the XP Pen Artist 22 2nd Gen, is it's got this matte screen protector. And again, I looked over the documentation and I can't determine if it is indeed frosted glass or if it is applied. I'm sure if I looked inside the documentation, I could find it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me, just as long as it works, right? Okay, getting into the inking process. So now that we've set up our layer hierarchy and we have determined what we're going to do, we've set up our DPI, our sizing, we've imported the rough sketch from the traditional format. You can set your palettes up, or not palettes, you can set your tabs, little windows up the way you want them. I typically have my history over here. Since I'm not putting any text, I can go ahead and get rid of this. And I've got my color wheel up there. So what brush am I going to use? This is something, as an artist and illustrator, and I've said this a couple times before, that you really should experiment with, Since I've already done an illustration, actually I'll pull it up for you guys. I've done an illustration with beans in it before, and I want to go ahead and keep the same style because these images will be used for really just children's book, the children's book that I've been working on. Here's Beans sitting with his buddies having a jam out session. And you see the brush that I've utilized does have a clean line, but also it's got really nice variation of line weight. And I'm looking, what did I use for this? I think this is the layered file. This is not the layered file. This is a JPEG. I don't think I had the layered file on here. File, open. Beans Fun 2. Yep, here it is. So we're going to pull up that inked layer really quick, just to kind of affluent myself, reaffirm that, the brush that I'm going to be choosing from my brush library here is going to be the correct one. Nothing irritates me more to open up a book or open up a children's book or an illustration and see a lack of continuity. And, you want things to be across the board whenever it comes to character designs and overall. Okay, so there's the ink layer. So I'm going to go ahead and hide all these other layers really quick. You guys see I like my layers. Okay, get rid of that. We're going to break it down to there we go. So it looks like I used my favorite brush. Awesome. So my favorite brush being this brush right here, the Pastel C with taper. And let's go ahead and confirm that. I'm gonna come over here and test it really quick. Okay, add a layer. And again, I press that center button on the XP Pen remote and it cycles through the pre-programmed options down here at the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead to brush size and I can scroll down and I've got 100% flow opacity. Yep, see, and I can confirm that is indeed the brush. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I don't want to save anything. No. Let's go back to this. All right. Now, I don't know how you guys ink. I don't want to say I don't care. It's one of those deals where every project is going to be a little bit different, right? I ink a little bit different on every project. So a project like this that is mine, hold on, we messed up here. Rotate brush size. Okay, that is mine. I'm going to ink it very simplistically. I'll go ahead and, like I indicated, I added a layer on top of my sketch layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw, quote unquote, draw / ink. Some people are really tight with their ink lines. I'm pretty loose because I like that sketch quality. It adds to the life of the piece. And I definitely recommend you find your ink path, right? If I were doing this in, let's say, Adobe Illustrator, maybe I want my ink lines to be the same. Maybe I want them to be different. Maybe I want a line width to be the same the entire piece. Maybe I want a clean line. Maybe I want a sketchy line. It just depends. So you guys find out what's going to be the best. Now, what you saw me do right here, I'm going to go ahead and do it again. So I noticed that my my brush did not have tilt on. So I brought up the brush window. I went up here to the left-hand side. I'm in brush mode. Up to the top tab, I clicked on this little folder and it brings up the brush settings. All these brush settings have to do with the tip and pressure and how the tip interacts with the surface of the device. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and now I've got pen tilt on. That has to do with the angle at which your pen is positioned at any point in 3D space. So let's go ahead and get out of here. Now that I've got pen tilt on, you see I can tilt my pen and you can watch the brush. You can see how the brush moves and tilts with the angle of which I'm drawing. That's important for me, and it doesn't happen on every single piece, right? Like I said, every piece is going to be a little bit different, and you know, as I progress through, sometimes I'll change, you know, depending on what my mood is at that particular point in time, what the piece is dictating to me, and a lot of times how fast I want to go makes a difference as well. Okay. Now you notice I keep clicking over here on the left-hand side. With this pre-program remote, it's really nice because I don't have to have a keyboard and mess around with the keyboard. I don't have to have my laptop / all-in-one in front of me. My all-in-one is on the right-hand side. I've got my quick key remote right here, and I can go in and, in the pure sense of drawing, oops, I will be utilizing the pen remote in the drawing inking process. Is the pen remote good whenever I sit down and do a bunch of text stuff? No, because I need to be able to have the keyboard in front of me to be able to utilize the character feature in whatever program that I'm doing at that particular point in time. So I can scroll through the fonts. Now, could I program the remote to work in that situation? I'm sure I can. But just for what we're doing right here, to show you this ink flats, color flats inking process, and you know, just however you determine, you know, what works for you. And I know I've said it so many times before, it kind of gets aggravating because you guys are looking for answers of what the best way is going to be. And sometimes that best way changes, right? It changes per piece. It changes, you know, what's happening at that particular moment. And also, I had a user, and my apologies if this is aggravating, and I know I do this, and I'm so sorry that I do it to those who are watching my channel and are looking for definitive answers. You know, sometimes I will start a thought, and in the midst of me drawing and me doing things, I will lose my train of thought and I'll move on to something else. And so my apologies for that. So now that they've pointed it out, I will make a concerted effort not to switch subjects. He's like, just choose a freaking thought and go for it. You need to finish a thought. And I'm like, I didn't realize I did that. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, so I'm sorry. My apologies to that particular viewer. Looking for some answers in the artwork world, and I failed you. Okay, so what do I think of the XP Pen remote so far? Or not remote, device. I like it. It's really good. I like the way it feels. It's got real nice you know, pressure and everything else, and definitely as I continue on and keep using the device, I'll probably like it even more. Very comparable to existing products in the marketplace, and I think that's by design. You know, one of the things in the design world that is pretty standard is to look at an existing successful product and you see where you could do better, cheaper, more streamlined, faster, right? And that is exactly what XP Pen has done. They've taken that idea of the 22-inch form factor that some of the other companies have utilized, and they've made it inexpensive and just as good as the existing companies that are out there. Your Wacom, your Huion, you know. And two, it's like, how big do you really need? You know, I've had that question come up before. How big of a computer screen / interface screen / drawing screen do you really need? And I always say the biggest you can get and be comfortable with it. You know, one of the other YouTube guys, what is his name? He's really funny. He wears sunglasses and he's an animator. What is his name? I can't remember his name. Terrible with names, people. Anyway, one of the things he said was the 32-inch Wacom was huge. Oops. It was huge. And I'm like, yeah, I can imagine. The biggest I've ever drawn on is a 22. I've never drawn on a 24 inch tablet, screen, whatever you want to call it. And I've always, you know, wanted to. I just haven't. You know, that's one of the things that I wanted to purchase this year was another tablet. And I just haven't had the chance because of money. Like, I haven't had a chance because of money. Well, yeah, that's kind of a problem with everybody sometimes. You know, money's that big thing that we all need. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so you guys, what you guys are seeing is just me kind of talking and drawing at the same time. You see the ink process. I don't have any smoothers on right now. Smoother being this little little box up here. If you have a really wiggly line, or if you're on a program such as Photoshop or you know, like your Clip Studio Paint. I think Clip Studio Paint has a smoother on by default. A smoother actually smooths your lines out, and it helps you regulate the jitter. There are some computer screens and computers that actually have a problem when it comes to jitter. You know, those of you who have used the Surface line know that the Intrig technology is well known and documented for having jitter. And I definitely recommend you guys, if you're having issues with that jitter, to turn the line smoother on, because it will help you have a better line stability. If that is something you want. I mean, nothing frustrates me more than whenever you draw a line like this and it's like, and you're like, snap! And it has nothing to do with you. So, anywho, it's a beautiful, it was a beautiful day yesterday. Is it a beautiful day now? Oh yeah. Turning out to be a beautiful day. For those of you who are just visiting the channel today and you found this video, welcome. I am a illustrator, professional illustrator, graphic designer, artist, toy designer, 3D sculptor, production designer, production illustrator, concept person, kind of an all-in-one. I would what you would be considered an all-in-one, the human all-in-one. I do quite a bit, but what I've always specialized in is this. This right here is my jam. And I live in the mountains of the very north tip of Georgia with my family, my children. And I've been here for quite a while, going on 5 years. 4 years. 4 years. Previous to this, I lived in Orlando, and I worked freelance there. I was a contract illustrator for Disney, and I was there for just over about 2.5 years. And previous to that, I worked as a staff illustrator, designer, artist for I'm going to give him a little bit of a fur collar. I think this is what that person's talking about. For a what? For a what? The suspense is killing me. For a design agency that specialized in apparel. So I got my beginning, my feet wet in art and apparel. And apparel design, you know, your shirts, your hats, your pants. I worked on shoes and then moved into accessories. So I did a lot of accessories. If any of you have ever been to Hard Rock Cafe and you've seen their jewelry program, years ago, I was the one that basically did the entire first run of the jewelry program. That was me. I designed the fixture, which is pretty cool. That was, again, stepping outside that proverbial design box. Ooh, that was interesting. What is this? Huh, that must have been an accidental. So let's go ahead and get the eraser. Good. What else? And previous to that, I worked at a company called Foot Locker Incorporated / Team Edition Apparel, which was owned by Venator Group and eventually became Venator. See you later, Michaela. That's my daughter. She's going to work. Okay. And I did, again, a lot of apparel, and this was based out of Sarasota, Florida. And, I freelanced quite a bit when I was there. I've been freelancing my entire career. I never really stopped. And that's one of the things we'll get into as we progress in our understanding of being an illustrator and a professional artist. You know, all of those jobs that I had, you had to put on different hats, right? You had to put on, I had to put on a design hat, I had to put on an illustration hat, I had to put on an apparel hat, I had to put on, you know, a myriad of hats that didn't define me as a person or an artist. They were just part of my artist tool belt. And I've talked about that tool belt before, and that's not a Mike Clarder original. I got that from Jake Parker. You know, your artistic tool belt. What are you going to put in? What are you going to invest in? You know, and all of those jobs required something different of me. But I've always been a firm believer that art, even though it is there is natural ability when it comes to art, don't get me wrong, but it is a skill. You know, drawing's a skill, and has to be practiced, has to be refined, has to be honed, has to be invested in. It takes time, you know, observation, and again, some of the, you know, some of the computers that you guys have, and I'm not talking about, you know, these type of computers, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about your brain. Some computers work different than others, and you know, we all know that. That's what makes, you know, our world such a diverse and wonderful place. And of course, depending on your culture, depending on where you were raised and all that other stuff, you know, you're going to be able to excel at different areas of artistic prowess. So let's do this here. There we go. So I am a puzzle solver. I love solving puzzles. And one of the things that I was always really good at, especially at the agency there in Orlando, was the ability to solve complex design equations that spoke to the retail market, right? That means I can determine kind of what a customer wants based upon a broad swath and a broad stroke of experiences from that area, or, you know, a particular genre, or a particular you know, type of buyer. You know, that understanding of what a customer wants before they have seen it. And that is, you know, that's something that I've kind of excelled at through my career. I've had quite a bit of success, and that's why currently I enjoy the clientele that I currently have, which is, you know, I work for a publishing company. I do toy design and illustration work for Warner Brothers and Universal Studios. And yeah, so I really have a lot of fun nowadays. Is it hard? Yeah. But the only way that I would have gotten to where I'm at is to allow myself to adapt and change, not be rigid, to really listen to what, you know, businesses and companies want, and look at the market and how it kind of moves and grows, you know. Okay, save. I have definitely been in that situation where I've been working and I forgot to save, and then it'll freeze and you're like, oh, sweet molasses. So yeah, so what kind of toys do I design? I get that question quite a bit. I design a lot of toys for retail and theme park markets, like your Disney World, your Universal, some of those things that have a lot of licenses. And for those of you guys who don't know how things like that work, there are product developers that work inside Universal Studios, and they're paid to kind of get the pulse of the, you know, not only the retail market, but also the kind of user and people that are going to be shopping and buying stuff at theme parks. You know, there's a huge market for collectibles at theme parks. You can go and, I mean, you go to Disney or you go to Universal, and they've got these items that you can only get in certain areas, like their Wizarding World of Harry Potter. You can't get some of those toys anywhere else in the market. You know, you can go to specialty places, you know, like a comic book shop, and you may see something very similar to at the parks. But at the end of the day, most of the toys that you're going to get at the theme parks are only going to be available to the theme parks. Unless, of course, you shop at eBay, which is a secondhand market. So I need to look at the hat here. My apologies for the... No. Oh, no. Let's let me look at the hat again. Okay, that's fine. Okay, good. Okay, good. Even though I've drawn beans a lot, you know, having the ability to go back and see some of the other work that I've done is very good, again, for continuity. I don't want to mess up his design, his character design, for the sake of not remembering, right? You don't want to do something just because you can't remember, you're guessing. Anyway, like I was saying, the toy market that I am in has to do with the theme park and collectible market. So like if you were to go to Halloween Horror Nights and you were to get one of their collectible figurines, you know, I may or may not have been part of that. Right? Or if you're there and you see a really cool collectible action figure or something, you know, that really talks to you, you know, again, that is something that, you know, I do for a living. And I did the same thing whenever I worked with Disney. You know, the plush market, I've designed a lot of plush. I've done a lot of really fun plush designs. You know, it's always fun to go to Disney World, or even today, and to see some of the stuff that I've done out there. I am interested in getting into the more of a retail market for toys. So, you know, I can't say Toys R Us anymore because Toys R Us doesn't exist. Your Walmart and just some of those other areas, some of the mass market stuff. Working for larger corporations such as Mattel or Hasbro has always been an endeavor that I would like to pursue. And if you guys know of anybody that currently has any openings or anything, I'll be up to doing that. Okay, so you guys can see it is a tedious process as far as inking goes, and you notice in some areas I have a thinner line, in some areas I have a thicker line, and that has to do with, again, explaining what variation of line weight is, you know. So instead of having one line weight for the entire thing, I like to really switch it up. So I'll have thin line, and then I'll have thick line, and then I'll have thick line and thin line and wispy line. And what that does is it helps my character have form without going in and utilizing any shadowing. So the thicker line weight helps in defining those forms better than just a single line weight. And it adds, for me anyway, it adds to that wonderful spontaneity that really defines my work. I remember going to watch the guys draw. I would actually pay a ticket price. I don't know if you guys ever did this. I would pay a ticket price to go to Disney MGM. This is before it became Hollywood Studios. I would pay a ticket price, full ticket price, to MGM. Back in the day, it was, you know, when I was a 20-something or teenager. I think it was a teenager. And I would go and watch them draw. And I would pay, at the time, you could get in for $30. think the full ticket price was $55 or $65, and the Florida residents were like $30 or $25. I go in and I'd watch. You know, I'd ride some rides, of course. I'd go have a bite to eat. But I was only there to watch the animators draw, because back then there was a full working animation studio in Orlando. And, you know, that was my dream, to work as an animator at Disney or any other animation studio. You know, at one point I wanted to go to work at Warner Brothers. I had an infatuation with Bugs Bunny and Chuck Jones, and I really, really wanted to be like Chuck Jones, you know, telling those stories and drawing and designing the characters and having fun with the Looney Tunes. I know you guys can relate to that. So that's what I did. And I always just watching them, I was more interested in the sketch. I wanted to, you know, the finish, you expect a finished piece to look amazing, right? But whenever you see the process of how things are done and how, you know, things are created, and what it is too, I think I looked at that and I thought to myself, they're making mistakes too. Maybe it's okay to make a mistake. Maybe it's okay for my sketch to be wonky and I can fix it, you know, later and not have to be so stressed about it. And it helped me, guys. It really helped me understand the process of art and how I was going to pursue something that nobody else at the time, you know, nobody else in my school that I knew of. I was in the art classes. You know, I was in some of the art classes that, you know, some of the people were in, and I can definitely remember I was the only person that wanted to be a Disney animator. You know. So what I'm doing right now is I'm in my brain. I like the way this is turning out quite a bit. And this is literally just getting started of, you know, getting started with this piece. And what I'm going to put in and how it's going to look, and having that underlying sketch there. I'm thinking of gravity and how things are going to affect these pockets, and this one's sitting on top of that one, and he's sitting and he's compressing things. So even though I've done the sketch is literally just a roadmap and how I'm going to make this drawing work and not be uber complex. You know, I want it to be easily readable. So, yeah, it's a fun thing when you can sit here and you have a beautiful view and you're looking out into the mountains. You know, my new place that I'm moving to in the next week and a half or so, 2 weeks. 3 weeks, might be 3 weeks now, has an incredible view of the mountains on two sides. And it's in a valley. And there's cows. Oh, I love cows. And it's funny, we went and moved some stuff recently over there, and because we've been given the opportunity to, you know, move some stuff over early. And the cows saw us coming, and they're like, hey, what's up, buddy? You know, of course they didn't say, hey, what's up, buddy? But, you know, they saw you coming, and they come over, and they're like, hey, what do you got? And I think they're used to being hand-fed, because the, I believe the owners, whoops, I think I'm on the wrong layer. Yep. Look at that. It switched layers. on its own. It has to do with this, and it also has to do with the secondary button. So let's go ahead and get back to the layer. Let's go ahead and lock that layer. Lock that layer. Actually, let's go ahead and get rid of all this. Oh, look at that. 3 places. Told you. I told you. I told you. Let's go ahead and get rid of these 3 false positives that I had. When I drew on the wrong layer, let's go ahead and lock that layer. Yay! Okay, get you out of the way. That's probably my fault. You know, as I was drawing, I probably accidentally clicked this back button, which it allows you to scroll to your eraser. So, go ahead and draw this up. Now, in this situation where I am right now, I have started to really kind of understand the overall anatomy of, you know, my character underneath the garment. So this line will come up, there's a little bit of thickness to the garment, and then it immediately comes around, and this kind of comes down, so this is going to be a little bit thicker. And maybe, oops, I hit it again. And maybe I want this to be a little bit thicker, but this comes down, and you need to be conscious of this. And you can see where I've drawn through. You want those lines to match up. So maybe this comes here, like that. Okay, so you need to be conscious of that at all times, because you don't want your character's anatomy to be completely wonkified, right? That's a technical term, by the way, wonkified. That means totally messed up. Okay. All right. And don't be afraid to redo stuff. You know, if it doesn't make sense, you know, in the overall design of the illustration, definitely start over or modify or change or do what makes sense, and constantly reevaluate where you're at in the illustration. You see I move around a lot. I'm not in one area at any particular point in time because I want that balance. And also, I've been criticized for zooming in and out. You're like, dude, you're making me sick. Well, there's a reason for that, because I want to be able to zoom in and out to really get a better idea of the overall composition. There is something called the navigator, and this is really convenient because it gives you an overall presentation of what the composition looks like from a zoomed out sense. The problem is, if you're working on a single screen like I am, having the navigator in here is kind of a drag. So I zoom in and out. And this is just something that I've done, you know, for a long time. So my apologies if I do make you sick for doing that. So far, guys, I'm pretty stoked about the XP Pen device, you know. I think it's definitely worth the $4.99 price point that they're asking on XP Pen website, you know. I remember one point in time I did have the money to buy the 24-incher, but then I kind of evaluated and I thought, maybe I'll just buy a Surface Pro 7. So I did, and I regretted it, because the Surface Pro 7 was a disaster. For me, anyway. I did do a review of it, and it was an okay device overall, but for what I really wanted to use it for, it just didn't end up working out for me. So I ended up getting rid of it. I got what I paid for. So, all right. So what I think I'm going to do for you guys, just so you're not sitting here listening to me drone on, I'm going to go ahead and put this on a time lapse for you guys as I ink the rest of this. And just know that this inking process, it takes time. You know, it takes time, even in the computer sense, because this is something I told some of the students that I taught. I said, as an artist, a lot of times you are the only person that is going to be working on the project. And with that being said, there is quite a bit of you time happening. That means, you know, you're the only one working at the desk. You're the only one that's in the room. You have to be disciplined. You have to do the things, you know, that work best for you. That's even if you're at a studio. You know, maybe they gave you an office and you have somebody you have to, you know, listen to. But this is it. I mean, it's sort of a solemn profession. You know? Yeah. I have noticed that's the one thing that I don't like. So the pre-programmed buttons on the XP pen, I can press and it goes to eraser. I guess I'm okay. I don't know. I'm very particular about my presets, and sometimes that one kind of messes with me. So. And also, whenever you guys are inking, even though you might be alone, you know, get some music. The music, if you're a music person, which I am. I have many drawings that are associated with certain songs, and whenever I see them, it literally takes me right back. I can remember what song, I can remember what I was doing, I can remember where I was. Very similar to the whole smell factor. You know, there's certain smells that bring you back. Bring you back to that moment where you smelled them, or it reminds you of a person. You know, a very well documented thing that happens to us as human beings. Okay. So as you see, I've got a lot more to go on this piece, but I think when I'm done, you guys are going to really enjoy it overall. You know, and you can basically see the process of how, you know, I utilize these digital programs to create artwork. Digital programs, digital tools, you know. And every time I do one of these, I do something a little bit different. I learn something a little bit new. I create something unique. And that's what art is all about, right? Curating something unique. You know? Okay, so I'm going to put you guys on time lapse. Enjoy. Okay, so now that I've got my general line into the document and onto the canvas, I can go ahead and hide my initial sketch. Now, I don't want to get rid of my initial sketch, and the reason for that is because I did do a little bit of shading, and I would like to use that as reference. And at the end, depending on how I want this particular piece to look, maybe I'll use that sketch, that underlying sketch, as a design element, or maybe part of the overall drawing to give it maybe some texture, some feeling. I don't like getting rid of my sketch because I remember so many times when I was in school that the teacher would indicate, you know, that whenever I transferred or translated, and I don't know if you guys have some of this issues too, translated my sketch, and I would use, you know, the overhead projector, and I would sit there and I would try and emulate my sketch the best that I could. Whenever it went over to the final, it lost something. And, you know, I kept hearing that over and over again. Everybody would say, oh, I loved your sketch. You know, what happened? And this is something that has plagued me throughout my entire career as an artist, illustrator, what have you. And nowadays, basically what I'll do is I'll just utilize my sketch as part of the final. I'll slowly progress through, and as you see from the drawing, I've got a real nice line quality, thickness and thin, and variation of line weight. And I want to translate that over to my drawing. So I would just basically use my sketch to do the final. So that being said, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and hide that drawing behind so you guys can see the lines. And I call these ink lines because they do have a quality of inking. The line has been cleaned up. I've pushed and pulled some of the areas that I wanted him to be a little bit bigger. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and look to see if it's not so much making a mistake, but what I'm trying to do is not to have certain things happen. So I can already see a couple things. Now, these are things that I see as a career professional. I see this in drawings all the time. I see it on the internet. I see it in professionals' work. I see it in people that, you know, don't look at the drawing or the illustration as a overall. Maybe they've worked in one area, and then they moved on to another area and moved on to another area, and then whenever everything's said and done, they don't, you know, they don't look at the entire piece and go away from it and then come back. I highly recommend you do that, especially if you're a professional. Look at your piece, you know, get done with it, and, you know, finished, not perfect. But what you really should do is just take a little while, go take a walk, you know, go get a drink of coffee. If you drink coffee, get some Mountain Dew or whatever your vice is, and come back to the piece and look at it with a different eyeball. Whenever you're in front of a piece for so long, you get the 12-inch eyes, and you don't realize that a lot of the mistakes that have been made are staring you right in the face. So what I do, and I've already done that, you know, overnight, I've come back to the piece, and now that I look at it, I see what are called tangents. Tangents are lines that intersect at, let's say we have two circles, okay? So a circle here and a circle here, where they touch, their outermost or really close, right here, that right there is a tangent. And we're going to put a very big frowny face to that, because what that does, especially whenever I'm trying to give depth of field and depth of line weight and depth of the piece, what I'm going to run into is whenever you put two objects close like this, it puts them on the same plane. So I'm going to give you a really good example of a tangent in my piece, okay? So I'm looking, okay, here's a really good example. Right there, okay? So his coat comes down, and it intersects with the same, with the line that is coming from this rock in the background. So the background rock needs to be pushed further behind, and I have actually placed it, because of this error, I've placed it on the same plane. So you're looking at it and you don't really understand why there's an issue, but there is. So what I'll do is I'll grab my eraser. I'll go ahead and come back. I'll thicken this line up again to pull it forward, and I'm going to have this just intersect. And see what that does is now suddenly that rock gets pushed further behind. And another really good way to do that is to have variation of line weight. What's great about this particular device, not only XP Pen 22 Artist Pro, or I'm sorry, the Artist Series, because it's got pressure sensitivity, but a lot of the all-in-ones and a lot of the other tablets, and I'll give you a really good example of pressure sensitivity here. Let's go ahead and increase the brush. So I'm gonna, and this is depending on the settings in Photoshop. Some programs have defaults, some programs do not. Some brushes have defaults. This particular brush is pressure sensitive, it's tilt sensitive, and it has pressure with value and of width. So, and I have it set up here that way. I can basically program the brush the way that I want it to. So here I'm going really light, and you see the value is really light because I'm pressing really light. So let's go ahead and increase the brush. And you would think that the entire area would be transferred to the canvas. But if you look at this little element right up here that looks like a bullseye with a pencil in the center, that has to do with taper. Taper being the line goes to a point. And I can specify all of these variables in this brush dialog box. You know, I wanted to make sure that you guys understood Photoshop is, again, a all-in-one program. You can do a lot in it. You can create a lot in it. You can create brushes that have a lot of variables. You can, you know, change spacing of the texture. You can change the shape dynamics based on pen pressure, so it has size, minimum diameter, the angle to which you have your pen. Also, you know, the angle jitter you can change to be pen tilt, or you can do pen pressure, rotation, direction. So these are things that you as a user should really experiment with. But variation of line weight has to do with how wide, how dark, or, you know, sometimes saturated, and how texturized the line will be. So let's say I want to draw a circle, okay? So circles are pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my taper. So let's go ahead and do a circle, okay? So the circle looks pretty good, right? It looks like a circle. That's exactly what I said I was going to do. But in the context of drawing and illustrating something, especially like this, I want variation of line weight. And if I want variation of line weight, I have to turn the taper on. There's a couple ways I can do this. I can turn the taper off. I can have variation of line weight. And then I can draw really light at the top. So suddenly, that circle has character. That circle has meaning. It has form, even though I haven't gone in and shaded this circle, right? If I come in and I start shading the circle, then you really start seeing some form happen. Form, again, being height, width, and depth. You know, maybe do a little shadow off to the side. Here, we'll put a little bit of highlight at the top. And that is variation of line weight whenever it comes to drawing lines and forms. Now, whenever I put the taper on it, the taper, again, being from, you know, solid, and then I'll go ahead and taper off the pressure, and it gets really thin, even though the brush stays the same size. I didn't change the brush size. I've adjusted and put a taper on it, so the less hard I put, I'm pulling off of the pressure from the pen, it's going to taper that line. So, with that being said, in the context of doing inking and giving a really organic, pressure-sensitive character line, I have put on the taper. Let's go ahead into black, make sure that we have the correct layer. Now, just for giggles, not giggles, just as a good practicing thing, you don't, if you get done with the entire piece and you don't like the way it looks, what can happen is you'll get frustrated because you didn't save a particular version, you didn't do something in the midst of doing the illustration. So my recommendation is just make it really easy. Add a layer, lock your initial sketch ink layer, and then come back to the drawing. So make sure that everything's good, tapers on, flow at 100, opacity at 100, and we've got, make sure that it's complete black, and we've got our favorite brush, which we do. Okay. So now I'm going to give the piece variation of line weight, and it's going to push back some of the elements, and it's going to pull forward some of the elements. And this is merely a visual, it's not a trick, it's just it's a visual practice that really helps the piece overall have a better, in my opinion, a better character feel. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna look at the piece overall, and I'm gonna decide on what I want to come forward. So I want this arm to come forward. I'm gonna have his face, this little area come forward. I'm gonna have probably this area come forward. And as I start doing it, you guys are going to really see what I'm talking about in terms of why it's important that you have variation of line weight. So let's go ahead and look at this front arm. And I'm going to go ahead and start putting in that thicker line. And see, even that right there, what has that done? It's pulled forward that arm from his stomach area. Now, you're thinking, well, okay, so now I'll do this. No, and I'm not going to do that because, again, what that does is it flattens it as a form. Remember we showed you earlier that circle. So we're going to go ahead and draw the circle again, and that was pretty plain, right? And then we went back and we did something similar to this. Now that I have the taper on, you can see the value of that. Suddenly it's no longer just a circle, is it? Even without putting shading in there, it is no longer just a circle. It becomes a sphere. Right? That's terrible. It becomes a sphere even without having to put those little construction lines in there. So, with that being said, overlapping lines, right? You have overlapping lines, and I've got a lot of overlapping lines in here. Even whenever I'm doing something like this is a really good example. An overlapping line, that top form comes over and it overlaps that bottom line. This right here is forward. This right here is under. See, I have this form coming, or this line going over like that, and this line coming under like that. So whenever you have that, I have this top line coming over. And I can do that in a couple other areas if I like. And I did it right here too. And this is another issue, see, just by going through and doing this. I'm going to go ahead and click on the eraser. I'm going to make the eraser a little bit smaller. And I'm going to, whoops. Oh, it's locked, duh. Because I've got converging lines coming into that area that I don't want. All those lines were coming into that one area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push this over. And it slightly goes right there. And again, that push, it pulls it forward. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this forward. I'm going to have this. And sometimes, guys, this is part of the process that can be a little tedious. I tend to do all of this whenever I'm doing the drawing. I just wanted to show you guys because this is an important step in the drawing process that helps the drawing in ways that you can't really put a value on. It pulls and it gives the drawing so much more character. What is that? We talked about that earlier. That is a tangent. This is part of his leg that goes further up on his waist. This is the edge of his toe. So I need to go ahead and fix that. Now watch. So it was on the same plane. Okay, so now we're going to bring this down. Okay. because again, this toe is going away, this direction, and this particular part of his foot is coming forward in this direction. And you have all these converging lines right here that are coming into that area and bringing some contrast. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna have that really pull forward. Okay. And as I go through, you see that as I start understanding the form of this drawing and what I really want to accomplish, things start going a little bit quicker, and I start really kind of pushing and pulling the sketch to then it becomes alive. Okay, whoops. One of the things that I'm not used to yet with this XP pen, the controller is programmed a certain way with certain new buttons, and the pen is programmed a certain way with certain new actions and buttons. So I'm still getting used to that, so my apologies for having to stop really quick. And two, whenever you have folds of fabric come together, it's no different than whenever you look at my glove, and if I were to take that top flap and pull it over, even though you're seeing some light, that line where those two overlapping lines connect is going to be much thicker. Like right here is going to be a much thicker line coming down, right? And you're going to have these peripheral lines, and you got this big heavy piece of fabric from his pants pushing out in this direction, so it's going to be thicker on the bottom. And this part is over this part, so it's going to be thinner. Then it's going to get thicker at the bottom. And then you have this coming to his leg. And it's, again, I'm not putting in a shadow. I'm just showing you a variation of line weight that really helps the drawing and illustration pop from the background. See, even just those lines, suddenly he's in an environment. He's not a flat drawing. He's in an environment. There's distance relationship from the background to the foreground, and I haven't even placed any of the shadowing in. Okay, there we go. So again, his tail comes out, it goes back behind him, and then it tapers here in the background. Now I made these lines a little bit thicker. Hindsight being 2020, I probably need, yeah, see, once I put that line in, it pushes all of these elements into the background. So let's go ahead and make sure taper's on, make sure we're on the right drawing layer, which we are not. Anyway, so let's go ahead and merge down. Okay. So that being said, and again, here's the shirt. And you can see this line, whoops. I did it again. This line right here is very similar to this line. And I want to have a nice kind of a billowing effect of this shirt, because here's a, let's go ahead and rotate this a little bit. Here's a crease that comes up. Here's a crease that comes up, right? You're gonna have this line thicker because it's coming off. There's a shadow, going to be a shadow because that's part of his coat. Here's his arm. That's again coming out. And this is, whoops, I touched that button. I keep touching that. I keep touching that for control. I need to go ahead and get rid of that. So I'm looking at this. Okay, so let's go ahead and double click this. And this claw right here, so we're going to go ahead and make this thicker, thinner, to again try to push it forward somewhat. And depending on your style, depending on how you guys illustrate, you know, this is all going to be part of your you know, the way that you do things, right? This is just one of the many ways that I do things. Whoops. but I always want to make sure that I, go back and I look at the artwork and try and change the things that need to be changed, look at it with a discerning eyeball, and find the best way to make the drawing speak to the user, speak to the viewer. Right? So we're going back, we're just putting some little variations here and there to help the drawing pop a little bit more. Like the bottom of this needs to be thicker. Maybe put a little bit bigger. And as this comes here and then it goes under, I'm going to make it thicker. That's a little bit too much. It goes here, and then it goes thicker, and then it goes thinner. Here, thicker, thinner. Because again, it's a divot. It goes in, and then it comes out. It goes in and out, right? Because you have these seams. Come here. Get that foot. I need to be thicker because it's the foreground. So that's just a simple exercise to help you guys liven up your drawings, and make them more attractive with very little effort. See, this is kind of coming over that overlapping line we talked about, giving it some line weight on the bottom. And this is part of the inking process. Now, I am not so much, quote unquote, an inker as I am a penciler. I'm more of a penciler because I think in terms of just motion and form, and this quick, the quick sketch that I really like. Some people that, drawing ink lines all day is their jam, and I think that is fantastic. Right? Inking is an art in itself. I had somebody recently ask me and say, should I pay inkers less money because it doesn't involve a creation of anything? And I said, here's the deal. I said, inking is an art in itself. It is, you're looking at an existing piece of artwork, and you're trying to discern what line is going to be the best avenue to take, and that in and of itself takes a very keen eye, because trying to decipher somebody else's work, or yours for that matter, can sometimes be a challenge, and finding that line, finding that path is very important, because that final line is what the end user is going to see. And I think inkers are extremely important in the context of, taking somebody else's work, or your work for that matter. That final ink line is the one that speaks. They need to be able to transfer that character of line over into the final product. So yeah, inkers, you guys, big props to you. If that's what you do, if that's your job, inking is your job. You don't really draw per se, you just ink, and I say just ink. You ink. There is no just. So props to you guys. So this is Beans. He is a alligator, and you're seeing him in his traveling garb. He's from Louisiana. You notice I didn't say Louisiana. Louisiana. I say Louisiana because that's how Louisianans say it. They don't say Louisiana. They say Louisiana. Remember, there's a tea that was for sale in Louisiana. Haha. Gotcha. It was for sale in Louisiana, and they called it Louisiana tea. Yeah. So in other words, I'm saying it grammatically incorrect because I grew up there. I've had a relationship with Louisiana for a long time. I did my entire childhood there. That's another thing about me if you don't frequent this channel. And, I grew up in a single road paved. It was paved not long before we got there. Before that, it was dirt. Yes, dirt. And it was between a forest and a field in a place called Denham Springs. And I kind of lived like Huckleberry Finn, to be honest with you. I would, you know, go down to the creek and go frog gigging. I would hunt. I would fish. I'd build tree houses. I'd get into shenanigans, you know, and this is back whenever you actually could get into shenanigans and not get in too much trouble. So I think that's where we're going to land today as far as this piece. Now look, see, I've got, this isn't so much a tangent, but it is an aggravation. So whenever you have two lines going the same way, that can cause an issue. And again, it looks like they're on the same plane. So what I need to do is I need to go ahead and, let's see the best course of action here. Erase this out. Okay. Nice. See, and then suddenly it makes it better. It's the little things like that whenever you look at the piece overall. So you start scanning it, you're scanning, and you're looking for all the details that are here. And you're like, wow, that's so detailed. That's something that I've noticed has been, you know, really brought off as being something really hyper important. I think the details are really good, but if it doesn't read very quickly, no detail in the world is going to save your piece. You can detail it till the cows come home, but if it doesn't read as how you're trying to portray it, which is a sitting alligator, right? Opening a can of beans. That's hilarious. If it doesn't read as that, you can put so many details in here and it won't make any difference. The piece will still suffer, you know? And two, all these other areas, like all these areas over here, they don't really need to be as detailed as the subject matter. You don't want to go in and overpower the piece with too much detail. It's you know, as an artist, determining where you need to stop the detail. So I think that's where we're going to land for you guys. The next video that I'm doing on this particular drawing will be ink flats and the rendering process. Hopefully I can get this video out to you guys. I'm actually doing some tutorial work for XP Pen. They have contacted me and they are interested in having me do some, you know, some tutorials for either their website or their YouTube channel. So I'll be doing some really fun tutorials for you guys, and definitely I'll be linking all of those in the description below after I get finished with them. I would not do the XP Pen tutorial unless I believed in the product. You guys know that I have my XP Pen remote, and now that I've got this device, I will be putting it through its paces and letting you guys know what I thought of it and think of it as time progresses. So far, it's been a joy to work on. The only hang up that I had was whenever I was first starting it up and my Lenovo computer was having some issues, and I found out one of the peripheral ports is broken. So that being said, overall, a very easy machine to set up. And again, you know, at the end of the day, I've said it 100 times before, if I haven't said it once, it is a tool. It is not a solution. Only a tool. You can see that there is no easy button to push. There's no one ring to rule them all. I think you guys can understand what I'm trying to say is drawing on a tablet like this is not, it is not unlike drawing on paper, right? Especially when they put like the coating on it and you have the pressure sensitivity. But is it exactly like drawing on paper? No, nothing is. Paper's paper. And you have to understand that there is a learning curve with these devices. And even though they are wonderful, you know, it is still an obstacle that you have to learn. And it takes time. And, you know, as an artist, be fearless, right? Be fearless, guys, whenever it comes to experimentation of new media and mediums and getting in there and understanding, you know, how to create images using this stuff. So I think that's all I wanted to show you guys today. Again, this is Beans. He is part of a duo of Frank and Beans. Frank, of course, is the alligator, or is the bear. And the story's about friendship. It's about going on adventures. It's about finding who you are, you know, and meeting a lot of people along the way. Well, animals. So anyway, thank you guys. Stick around, look for that other video when it gets posted. Watch me put in the color flats. But today I just wanted to go through and show you my process of translating from traditional sketch, which is right here, over to digital, which is right here. So now we will go into the color era. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon. Bye. And as always, thank you guys for visiting the channel. Like and subscribe and share, and go out and create something awesome in the world. And stay tuned, more videos coming. Thank you guys. Bye.